to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. This is the place where you get both a coach's and sports dietitian perspective on topics important to endurance sports, including nutrition, training, and how these impact and fit into your daily life both on and off the race course. Your host, Coach Justin, certified run and triathlon coach and owner of Tabula Rasa Racing, along with Coach Katie, a registered dietitian with a specialty in sports nutrition and owner of Fuel to Run. Here at the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast is where your journey begins. Welcome to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I'm your host, Coach Justin, along with Coach Katie. This is our second episode of Coach's Corner. And so today we're going to be discussing something that has been going on in my training plan. And Katie and I were kind of having this discussion offline. And she said, I think we should just go ahead and just hit record. Yeah. So I've been trying to flush out this idea or these ideas that I've got kind of going on and some of the issues that I've been dealing with in my own trainings. Let's dive right in. So a little bit of a backstory. If you've heard this podcast before, you've heard that I've had issues with my shoulder. I've had a torn rotator cuff and a torn bicep tendon, where the bicep tendon was relocated, arthritis scoped out of the shoulder, chronic tendinopathy in my elbow, but it's a golfer's elbow. Even though I hate golf, I was horrible at it, I still got golfer's elbow. So it's just horrible. And I have had in the past issues with tendinopathy in my Achilles, along with plantar fasciitis. So it has been quite the journey for me to try and manage some of the issues that I've had to deal with, but I've made it work, and I think I've had some significant accomplishments in spite of some of the issues that I've had to deal with. So lately, what's been going on? I've been working hard, over the past year to kind of rebuild my swim. Because of the rotator cuff surgery, I developed frozen shoulder, which is basically an accumulation of scar tissue that restricts movement. And so as a swimmer, that's not really optimal. So, as you're trying to come in and trying to get that early vertical forearm and the catch, you can't get your hand up into the water to get a proper catch. There's no strength behind the pull, and you basically are swimming one-sided. So I have spent a lot of time trying to break up that scar tissue and get some mobility and strength back in the shoulder, a lot of time in the weight room, and I've seen significant progress. It flares up, and it's not happy with me right now, actually, but it's been manageable, and I've purposefully limited my racing to sprints and an Olympic. And even then, I thought an Olympic was kind of stretching it. So that was kind of like my stretch goal. And the only reason that I signed up for an Olympic is I had a bike fit because I bought a gravel bike. And my bike fitter said, well, I'd really like to see you do an Olympic. And that's all it took to plant the idea in my head. It's very easy to convince me to do stuff, as you'll hear later on in this episode. And so I signed up for one, but I only had the intention of just doing sprints this year, just getting my feet wet again, getting back into multisports after a 4-year hiatus to deal with some of these issues that I've had. And things have been going well. I had developed some Achilles tendinopathy in one of my feet, and worked, went to PT, got it manageable and got it cleared out for the most part, and it flares up every once in a while. But now in the other foot, I started to feel a little bit of fire in the heel on that foot. So I thought, great, now I've got both feet that are kind of subject to flare-ups. Now it's kind of progressed into what feels like some early stages of plantar fasciitis, because I feel it right in the heel, and I know what it feels like. It is brutal. I don't wish it on my worst enemy. And so, I've been doing my recovery, doing my stretching and rolling, things that I know that I'm supposed to do. I'm not as diligent as I should be, so I own that. But, this morning I was hammering away at it with the Theragun before I would try and go out for a run. My approach over the past few weeks is, after I finished my Olympic race, I shut down my running to kind of give my ankle and my Achilles and my feet kind of some chance to recover. And then I started back with just 2 30-minute runs and discovered that 30 minutes was too much. And so I looked at the clock while I was running, and I could feel the ankles and the Achilles kind of flare up a little bit. And it was right around the 20-minute mark. And so I said, well, what I'm going to do is I still want 60 minutes of volume in my training plan. So instead of doing two 30-minute runs, I'm going to do three 20-minute runs. That way, right at the point where the Achilles starts to flare up, I shut the run down. Right? I'm still getting the volume that I want and still kind of loading things up without overloading it, which I feel is the right approach for me. And things were going pretty well until like this past Sunday, I went out on the trail, went on a trail run for my 20 minutes right before I was going to do a longer bike session. And like the first step that I took on the ground, I could feel it just in that Achilles and in the heel. And it never kind of went away. So I've been kind of struggling ever since. And what I wanted to do, my intention was to progress my run. And because I have a half marathon that I want to run in November. And so my training plan isn't going to start until August, but in order to be fit enough to start the plan, I needed to have a little bit more run volume under my feet, literally speaking. So I've been kind of like pushing mentally. It's like, look, I really need this. I really need this. But at the same time, trying to be a responsible athlete and wear both athlete and coach hat and say, look, I know this is what I want, but my body's not ready for it. And it's extremely frustrating. And, you know, in our previous episode where Katie was talking, I think she was dealing with kind of like the same issues. Like she wants to do it, but the body's not ready for it. And it's a really kind of like challenging dichotomy to try and listen to both of these little devils on your shoulders. It's like, no, you really need to start running. No, you can't start running because it's going to flare up and it's going to be bad and you're going to make things worse. So which devil do you listen to? You know, it's really kind of, it's challenging, especially when you're self-coached. So Katie, do you have any insight on how you reconcile that scenario?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. I think my first thought is like, because I have actually an athlete that I work with that's a runner, and that she had some Achilles issues come flare up, and she ended up taking like a couple weeks, or it was like 2 weeks off of running completely, and then like did a run walk program. So I know there can be like a lot of, and it's working really well. It's just sort of this really progressive run walk program. So she's getting like a lot of time on her feet, but some of it is, obviously warming up with walking and then running a certain amount and then walking and running and walking and then gradually progressing to like maybe 20 or 30 minutes of running. So like I kind of wonder, part of me kind of wonders if, you do need to just like it's hard when you have something planned in November, but you have some time. I think if you were to just like do that, take that time off, let it heal, and then slowly kind of progress back into it and do plenty of Achilles strengthening. Obviously you have to be careful, but doing like even the exercises with bands that are kind of strengthening the Achilles, or sitting in a chair and doing calf raises instead of like using your body weight, or even like weights, which can be kind of aggravating to it at first, like just slowly building up some strength after you let it heal, and then doing a run walk program might get you back into it and maybe save you to be able to actually do that race. Because I'm afraid if you keep going along, you're not going to be able to do the race because you're just going to continue to aggravate it and you're never going to make it past 20 minutes of running, So it's like you've got to have, there's
Yeah.
like a couple, you almost need to like just give it a rest. And I think as long as you do things that don't aggravate it, like I don't think cycling would, but it probably is, something you'd have to test out, or maybe you notice it doesn't. And I don't know about swimming because you do kind of point your toes. I don't know if that's aggravating, but if you're doing exercises that aren't, you can still kind of stay in shape and still do the strength part, but give that a rest and then do like a very gradual run walk program. And I think then you would be able to build it up to the point where you could do more running. Whereas now it's like, I don't know if it's aggravating you right away as you hit the ground and you can't really do more than 20 minutes. I just don't see it getting better. I don't think it's just
Yeah.
gonna, Achilles injuries are sucky in that way. They don't just generally go away. I mean, sometimes they might, come and go a little bit, but it's almost like nipping it in the bud, if that's the right way to say it, but
Hmm.
like kind of getting it taken care of, give it a couple weeks almost off, which is hard. Like, I get it. Like, that's like me, like someone telling me, like, take 2 weeks off of running and that's my main sports. That would be extremely hard for me, but I've had to do it before when I had like a meniscus tear like a few years ago. Like, I had to take more than a few weeks off and it's aggravating and it's annoying and, but I came back and built back into it with a run walk program at that point and it went really well. So I don't know, just a thought. Like, that's kind of my thinking on the
Yeah.
running piece. And then, I kind of think you have to kind of think, okay, what's your goal for the half marathon? Like, but I think you could maybe get there better if you allowed it versus like trying to like hit your head against the wall and keep trying to run and kind of running into the same issue over and over again. And then if you can't make it past 20 minutes of running, I don't see how you would make it through a half marathon, if that makes sense.
It's absolutely true. I'm definitely the kind of guy that's just going to keep hammering my head against the wall and trying to mentally just will it to happen.
Right.
And it's never served me well. And apparently I still haven't learned the lesson. So that is a good idea. This week I progressed. I thought that I was going to be able to, when I created this week's plan, which was several weeks ago, in my head, I was like, okay, well, I can progress it. So I should be at 30 minutes now and then, keep going. So, but I got to this week and I was like, I'm not ready for 30 minutes. So I did 25 and 25 stung a bit on Monday, 25 better today. And so I don't know if I'm just kind of going in on that Monday run with a lot of fatigue because my Saturday and Sunday are pretty high volume. Even Friday is a high volume day. And so if I'm going into the Monday session just really inflamed, which is a strong possibility, but
yeah,
I do have a run walk
moving it
protocol that I could implement. It's hard. It really is. And it is a humbling experience when you've had such a good training plan, that's been going on for the year and you've seen a lot of growth and progress to then have to tell yourself, look, you can't run right now. You have to run walk. It almost feels like you're regressing rather than progressing. And it's a bit of a humble pie that you have to kind of eat a little bit. And it's hard to do.
It's hard, but you have to kind of think like, it's always hard. That's why it is hard to be your own coach because you do have to kind of think like, what's the consequence though if you do keep trying to, push forward and then you get even more injured and then you have to take maybe even a more substantial time off and then you really are going to regress versus taking, I even wonder if you just took a week off just to kind of give it a break and then started a run walk program. It's just maybe building it back up and building some of the strength because if it's kind of only bothering you sometimes, I don't know, maybe you can kind of build into it a little bit better that way. But I do worry, like, if you keep pushing forward, it's just going to lead to maybe more, just more injury. And then you're like looking at a longer recovery time or, you're not having to reassess your goals for the remainder of the year and into next year too, potentially. So, sometimes that is a hard pill to swallow to have to take the time off and to have to, regress a little bit to a run walk program. But it's sometimes something like that is necessary. And I know you're already doing some like Achilles strengthening, foot strengthening stuff. So that's, probably good. There might be more things you can kind of add into that. But yeah, that's my thought is like my just try to get it figured out now before it's becoming like a really major problem. And it's hard to know if that's going to happen. Like you'd have no idea if you keep pushing, maybe you can kind of push through it and then it kind of works its way out. And sometimes that's happened to me with injuries where I'm like, oh, it's uncomfortable and I'm just going to keep trying to go for it. And then it miraculously, but that doesn't happen very often. Usually It's like, oops, I kept running on this and now it's a major problem. Like that kind of happened with my meniscus thing that I was talking about a couple years ago. Yeah, it's tough. And then especially like you were, you were talking, and I don't know if you want to share like, because you had another development sort of happen too, like recently. I don't know if you want to share that, but for now or want to wait. But
Wait a minute, what happened?
I hear you, so I can't.
It says that I'm still recording, but for some reason my picture just kind of went haywire. Of course,
yeah. Well, you want to keep chatting, or
yeah, I'll just keep
we
chatting.
don't have the video. I don't know.
So I don't quite know what's going on here, but so the next development that I had is I signed up for, this was, I guess back in, it was been in May. And so one of the things that I had done is I had some friends tell me ask me to be part of their relay team. So I said, and they wanted me to be a swimmer. And I've done Ironman Chattanooga before. I had never done the half Ironman, but I think it's basically the same course. It's just kind of shortened. And so I questioned on whether I had the ability to swim the whole thing without really kind of like messing things up in my shoulders as I was trying to progress towards my A race. And so I said, well, let me just see how my training goes and I'll let you know. Not thinking that I was going to do it at all, but my swim training was going pretty well, actually, and I had surprised myself. And the volume that I was already putting in was at a half Ironman level volume. I was swimming like K workouts. Of course, I wasn't swimming 3K straight. So, but I still had the volume of a half Ironman race, and things were going well. I was feeling strong, and so I reached out to him, and I was like, "Yeah, let me. I'll do it. Let's do this." And I just wanted to just go out and just have some fun. I was looking forward to the test, and we got down there. It's about like a 8-hour drive from where I live down to Tennessee. My mom and I have family. My sister lives down there, and so it was going to be a nice, cool trip that we could take to visit family, and we had a place to stay, so it really wasn't going to be that of a burden on the pocketbook kind of thing, where races can get pretty expensive just on the logistics side of it. And I got down there and I was feeling fantastic. I felt great, and we got down there a little bit early. And so I was walking into Ironman Village for packet pickup. So I was going to meet my team down there, and walking into the expo, they sent out the message that the swim was canceled. That area had just gotten a lot of rain, and so the river was running really high and really fast. They said that they had projected it to be flowing twice the speed that it usually is. And the Tennessee River, and for Chattanooga, is already a downriver swim, and it's already fast. So I could only imagine kind of like what that was going to be like. I was going to have a massive PR, so I was kind of looking forward to it. I was like, come on, this is going to be great. But then I saw like the trees and logs that were flowing down the river too, and I was like, oh, maybe not. So, but I stayed down and went to the race and supported my teammates and did the best, as much helpfulness as I could, in, transition, just helping them, being kind of like a Sherpa, kind of like. And I had a great time, like, spectating the race. I don't spectate very many races, and I know it's something that I probably should do more often, but it definitely lit another fire, because you're kind of sitting there on the sidelines and you're watching these people race. Even though it was really hot and really humid and they looked like they were not having fun, you're just like, man, I really wish that was me. The one side of your brain says, I really wish that was me and I wish I was racing. The other side is like, thank God I am not racing, because these people look miserable. It is so hot, and I can easily just kind of go home. And so I didn't think anything of it. It was nice to, kind of hang out with some friends and make some new friends. And I went home. And so this is last week, I got an email from Ironman saying that Ironman Chattanooga didn't go like many had planned, and they want to make sure that, we get a race that, we had trained so hard for. So they were offering me a free registration to any 2025 half Ironman 70.3 race in North America, so in the US, that still had registrations open. And I saw the email and I nearly dropped my phone. I was like, what? And of course, now the dialogue is going on in my head. It's like, I had no plan. It was already a stretch to do an Olympic in my mind. And so now I have this potential to do like a half Ironman, which is ultimately what I'm trying to progress to. But I've been doing this a long time, and I've raced a bunch of Ironman branded races, and this does not sound like something that they normally are known for, and that's giving away registrations. So I start pinging different people. It's like, hey, I got this email. Did you get the same email, or have you gotten anything like this? Because I reached out to people that had done Ironman Chattanooga just to kind of see if maybe they took some subset of the people that did the race, and they were just doing this for good PR. But everybody told me, no, we didn't get that. So then I thought it was a scam. So I was just like, this is not real. And so I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to email Ironman Chattanooga 70.3, because that's where they said it was coming from. But the email address was slightly different. So I was like, okay, well, this seems fishy, but I'm going to email the address that I know is legit and see if this is a valid offer. And of course, it's over the 4th of July, so I'm sitting here biting my nails, trying to get a response from them because it came with a deadline. It's like I have until the 13th to accept this offer from Ironman. And so I was like, yes, time is running out. It's clicking. And so last night, I got an email response back from Ironman Chattanooga 70.3. And they said, yes, this is a valid offer from Ironman. So go ahead and register for any race that you want and let us know if you have any problems. And immediately the conversation began with my wife. It's like, okay, this is a real offer. And it's hard to say no to a free race that would cost anybody between $400 and $500 to do, just for the opportunity to just go ahead and just race. Even if I don't feel like, I may not be as well trained as I would want to be in my own head, still the opportunity to kind of go out and toe another line is something that it's hard to say no to. So I am in the process of trying to get this registration. I've tried to go in and register. So I picked a race that I thought that I could kind of be ready for, but the registration is not working. It's like the promo code is a little bit off, and it's not registering something. So I sent a follow-up email to them. So hopefully they're going to get back to me pretty soon. They didn't specify if it had to be a relay or if it could be an individual race because I was part of a relay team. So I don't know if they're inferring that I would sign up for another relay rather than a full race. So we'll find out. So that is still forthcoming, but
yeah, that's so interesting.
So the question becomes, I can't run more than like 20 to 25 minutes without feeling like I'm running on glass. My bike fitness is really, really good. My swim fitness is coming along. I wouldn't say it's good, but I'm stronger than I was in January.
But what is it, like a mile, like a mile?
Yeah, it's like
A little over a
1.2
mile.
miles.
Yeah,
and
I
so
mean, not that
there's
far
not
off
much
the
there's not
Olympic.
much difference between a half Ironman distance swim and an Olympic.
Yeah.
So an Olympic is like 1,500.
So the swim
And
is.
so you just swim like an extra like 700-800 meters and you have a half iron. So it's not that big
that's
of it's not that
doable.
big of a deal.
It's really the run, I think.
The run is the big difference in the bike.
Yeah.
I mean, the bike goes from like 25 miles up to now you're talking 56 miles. But my normal long ride now is 40 miles, and I'm doing it like 2.5 hours on a gravel bike. And so, those are clearly a lot slower than just being on a road bike. So
you have more resistance.
I don't think I have. I don't think I have to do much in terms of like beefing up my bike portion of my training plan. It's the run thing that I'm concerned about. So my thought is that this is something that I'm supposed to do. And I know that I have a tendency, and I'll just tell you that I'm a man of faith. And so, I have a tendency to assume that I have control. I control my training plan. These are things that I have to do. And this is something that I feel like is a lesson that I have to learn. And, it's something that I'm going to be taught is that, I almost have to kind of step out in faith on this one and say, I'm not going to be able to train like I want to train, but, I'm trusting, in God to get me from the starting line to the finish line and then just trust him.
It's interesting because it's like something, you got the email, like there's something, especially if it is like for a full race and not like a relay, which obviously if that's, you can always ask like, well, could I sign up for a full and see what they say? But it's interesting that happened because you got to think, well, is there some sort of like, I don't know, reason that this is happening? Like, is it kind of meant to be?
Exactly. That's the conversation that I had with my wife. And I was just like, because we both kind of felt like I was supposed to do Ironman Chattanooga as part of the relay. I had serious doubts and serious questions on whether I could physically do it and do it as well as I wanted to. Part of it is ego, where I'm a coach and now we have this podcast, so people are listening to us and the presence of social media, and they kind of see this stuff. Part is like, I want to perform well because I want, part of me wants people to think that, hey, this guy knows what he's doing because obviously he can perform. But it's completely irrational and not even necessary. As long as I can get my athletes to perform like they want to perform, it doesn't matter how well or how poorly I perform. But I've had a great year. It's way better than any of the other years that I've ever had racing. And so my wife and I felt, I have to go to Chattanooga. I'm supposed to go. And then we get down there and the swim is canceled. And, we're both really deep in our faith, and we're just like, why do you feel like, we were being led to go to Chattanooga if, I mean, God clearly knew that the race was going to be canceled, but, I stepped out in faith, and doing something that I didn't think I was prepared to do. And I was just going to trust him. And so I get down there and the swim is canceled. So part of me was just like, oh, I wonder if, that step of faith was needed in order for, this to come along. And so, I don't quite know. I don't know if that's the reason for it, but that's what I'm going with.
I don't know,
And
but
so,
yeah,
you know,
there may be a
that's
reason.
that's the
Like, there's
justification that
okay.
I'm giving it, because I mean, if any of our listeners has ever raced Ironman pre-COVID, so this was a very different Ironman organization prior to COVID. Prior to that, if you had to defer a race, it was almost impossible. There was no switching races. There wasn't like, oh, I got injured, so now I can't race. You were just out of luck. You just had to eat it. But that's what they were known for. So you knew going in that, this was an investment that you were making, and you weren't going to get an out. And then they kind of introduced kind of like the insurance thing. So, but there's, specifications and criteria and classifications on, when you can collect on the insurance. That's always kind of been there. But they word those things to where it's like, it's going to be like an act of God in order for you to, get the money out of the insurance. So now we're kind of seeing Ironman, roll out with these things, letting people switch races and deferring and everything else. And I think that they just took so much flack over their lack of customer service and willingness to work with the athletes that I guess, as part of their business model, they say, well, it's going to be in our best interest, even though we have fixed costs, in terms of like permits and everything else that they have to secure in order to have these races. If you switch from one race to another, that's a race registration that they can't sell in that other race. And they're just going to have to eat the registration that you took up. So it's not something they were known for. So kind of when I'm reconciling this in my head, it's like, oh, is this a real offer or whatever? Because it's going against my entire experience with them. Seeing that they've kind of like, they're doing this kind of more outreach, and I think they're trying to soften people's view of them. And I think it's vital for the sport. I think it is crucial for the longevity of the sport and to get people to do races. This is by no means a reason to not train. Oh, well, my training didn't go, or I lacked motivation, so I'm just going to defer. To me, that's not a valid reason. You knew what you were getting into when you clicked the registration. Now, if you get hurt or something like that's a different story. But my
Yeah,
training
there's
just didn't go well, and I'm not ready. That's
so
just
I'm gonna
not a reason.
defer. I'm sure they have like certain stipulations for that, but it is like I think when you're signing up for a race, if you're signing up and you're like, okay, I can't like, what if I do get like, there's some when you're doing like a half Ironman or an Ironman, there's a fairly like I don't know what the possibility is you'd get injured, but I mean it's a lot of training, right? And there's a
Yeah,
possibility something could happen, and to have I mean those races aren't cheap, so I mean I feel like it's an investment and then to lose that money because they won't defer it or they wouldn't, have some leniency there. It's like it makes me not want to maybe sign up for that
right.
branded race. I would maybe do one that was not through like an Ironman, but similar distance because of that. And I think that's why I've done that in the past. Because my one half Ironman distance race was not through Ironman. I've never actually done an Ironman race because maybe at the time I did that, I'm like, okay, I'm not, first of all, spending $500. And second of all, I don't want to like, what if I can't do this? Like, I don't want to eat that. And then, when you do more local race that's not branded, it's a lot easier sometimes, their
Right.
customer service. So maybe they're realizing that, like, okay, we have to be a little bit better about this. And then you also have like women getting pregnant. And I mean, that would make me mad if I were, pregnant and then couldn't do it. Obviously, I'm not gonna be able to do like an Ironman. And then they're like, sorry, like you
Right.
can't do it. Like you eat that cost. Like, so I'm sure there's certain things that kind of came up in that, but it's great that they're maybe, offering that because it's like, I'm thinking too, like, you weren't able to do your race at all because you didn't do the swim portion. So maybe
Right.
they were only offering it to the people who didn't even have a chance to compete, because you came all the way down there to do that. And so maybe that's not why not everyone in the race probably got it, but maybe because you didn't even have a chance to do your portion. So it was
Mhm.
just specific to the people who missed out on the swim or something. I'm not sure, but it's interesting either way. And it does create like, because you weren't planning on doing
No.
anything like that. So it creates a new kind of scenario. So you're thinking of doing what, the one in December. So
Yeah, so I looked, I immediately started scouring races that they had available. The Ironman website, you can filter it to where you can just see races that have registrations that are open. The last Ironman that I did, or the last mid-course, so the last 70.3 that I did was Ironman North Carolina. And let's see, that was I can tell you, it's 2021 is when I did it. And it was an absolute dumpster fire. It was my worst performance ever. I had kidney stones, I had gout, I had all kinds of stuff that I was dealing with, but I finished and I had like 15 minutes left before the official time was up. It was the closest I've ever come to not being able to finish, but I crossed that finish line, but it hasn't sat well with me, that kind of performance. So I was like, well, maybe one day if I can get myself squared away, I can go back and get some validation from this race and that I can actually do well at it. But that race is in October again. It's open, and so that was my first thought. But in order to do that, I would have to start training like this week, and
yeah,
so
you still
that's
have
just
the
not in
issue
the
with the
cards.
running, I
And I
think.
still can't run, so I don't think I can. I know that I won't be ready for something like that. So I'm eyeballing Ironman Florida 70.3 down in Haines City, Florida. It's December 14th, I think is the date. And so it fits into the schedule a little bit better. It gives me a little bit of lead up time to where I can still trying to manage and get stronger. I can still continue my focus in the weight room. I'm lifting heavy now, so I'm really trying to generate some more power. And so, I like this approach and I want to stick with it for a little bit. And then I can easily kind of start going into my training, because it's not that my body has to be ready to train. My mind has to be ready to train. And I don't think that my mind is ready for a 70.3 training cycle. I don't feel like I'm ready for it. But I think that I think I can get there when I need to get there to train for this one. So it's going to be kind of like August. It
Right.
might
And
be
I think
like
that's where,
mid to late August. And I think, yeah, that's
taking some
doable.
time off from the running, then I think is doable, because, if you were to do that and then sort of build back up your run and maybe allow a chance for your Achilles to kind of recover, then, you'd still have August, September, October. You'd have like, yeah, 4 months to kind of
Yeah.
build it in. And since I think probably the one thing that's going to be the limitation there, because it's the 13 miles is, I mean, to me, it's like, the swim is not much harder than a little Olympic. The bike, I mean, you're a good cyclist, like you're used to biking a lot, like you'll be able to do the 56 miles, but it's that 13-mile run. I mean, and
Yeah.
it's sucked to kind of get to that point and then have to like walk most of the run, and not
Yeah.
be able to
I've been
perform
there
like you would like.
before.
And
I
I
think
mean,
I
even
think
if
the
you get to the
focus,
race
yeah.
and you have to do I mean, even if you get to that race and you're not 100% with your running, you can even in the race do almost like a run walk, in the race and still do pretty darn good. So it's not like it's impossible. And even if you're like, okay, I'm getting to this race and I don't think I can run an entire 13 miles. But if you plan like, okay, I'm going to run every, 10 minutes, I don't know, whatever it ends up being, I'm going to walk for
Mhm.
a few, I'm going to run and then walk. Like, some people can actually perform much better that way than even trying to run the entire thing. So it's not, I don't know. I feel like you can make it happen. But I think if you're going to do that and you're going to sign up, I think it's even more critical that you kind of allow a little bit of recovery instead of, like to see if that helps with the Achilles piece instead of
Right.
continuing. And then I don't know what you're going to do about your November. Like, I guess you could still do that half marathon, but obviously that might be more like you might have to maybe make that more of like I'm doing this kind of as part of like the training to see if I can
Yeah.
complete a half, like, and like so much like I'm doing this for any sort of performance or time goal, but more so like, okay, this is just something I'm going to do to see if I can kind of complete it. But
Yeah, the,
that's,
the the half marathon is early November, and then the half Ironman would be in mid December. So there's plenty of gap between the two, and so it would be good to just maybe just use that half marathon as part of just the training plan. The only reason the half marathon is on the plan is because I had signed up last year and had some pretty severe Achilles issues, and my chiropractor slash PT had to have a little come to Jesus meeting with me and said, look, stop what you're doing. You are going to rupture something, because I refused to slow down. I refused to quit. I was like, we just need to manage this and get me through this, because I was training for something else. And so once that was over, I was like, okay, well, now I've got this half marathon. And so I was rolling in from one to the other. And he said, defer the half marathon. It's not worth it. You're going to really hurt something if you keep pushing like this. And I need that person. I need that kind of person in my life. So that's the only reason that I have it on the calendar this year, is because I can't defer it again. And
Right.
so,
You almost
it's
have
like,
to.
okay, well, it's
Okay.
either I have to eat the loss, which it wasn't a very expensive race, but I don't sign up for races and just not do them. That's just not part of who I
Yeah, but
am.
I mean, sometimes you
So,
have to. Like, you can't do them, like you're injured or something, but I think you could still do it. But I do really think it might be critical to take a little bit of time off from anything that aggravates your Achilles and then come back to it and allow that time, because you're not going to, once you're in it, like once it's like September or August, September or October, like if something happens then, or it really starts to get aggravated then, like that is not an opportunity, like a great time
yeah,
to
you're in a
take
worse
time off.
position. Yeah.
Like you're yeah, it's going to be a problem, more of a problem, right? So like to the point where you might not be able to do the race. So I think if you could take that, you have some time now in July before you really have to ramp up training, especially if you do that half Ironman. And so it's like, take some time to rest. I know that's hard to do. Like I just like
Yeah.
struggle with that too, but sometimes you just have to listen. It's like when I was after my marathon, like we were talking about in our last coach's corner, is like, my body was clearly telling me, even after that week off, like I was having all this joint issue, just like really bizarre symptoms of something. And it probably was just a viral arthritis, something my body was fighting off. And it was just an odd symptom. But it was basically like, I can't, like, and I don't, and I tried, and my body was like, you just can't do it. You felt terrible. So, yeah, I had to listen. It was like, I'm just going to kind of do run walking stuff. And we talked about that a little bit. I was doing some, like, I would run and then I would walk, stop
Hmm.
for a few days there. And then I was taking a couple days off, and then finally felt better and was like, okay, I'm going to start getting back into it. But it's been, even since then, a really rough road. Like even this morning, I tried to do a track workout. The heat wasn't helping, but it's like, man, like I just am not feeling peppy like I was before. And it's just, I had to change my track workout completely. Like I had to like minimize it. I had to do less. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And I just did some shorter 200s versus what I was supposed to do in my training plan, because I just was like, okay, this is what I feel like doing, and this is what and at least I'm getting some speed work, but it didn't go the way I wanted, because I was just struggling to hit, and I was even being pretty lenient with my recoveries and things like that. So, you just sometimes have to listen, yeah, it's frustrating when when again, know where you were, but and you're coming back and you're like, I don't, especially if you stop and take a break and then come back to a run walk program, it's frustrating because I could probably run this full 30 minutes or whatever, but you've got to like, you have to do that sometimes, and you have to adjust, and sometimes it's not going to, the workout isn't going to go as you planned, and you have to sometimes even adjust in the moment. Like I do actually have done that several times where I'm in the middle of my workout and I'm like, this is just not going as planned, and it's not going to be in my best interest to continue to hammer this out. And it happens. So I don't know. That's my advice, is take
Yeah,
time off running.
it is. This is really good advice. So I think I'm going to have to take a look at the run workouts that I do have in my training plan going forward, because I do have like several weeks planned out in advance.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ideas that I had that I've used before was to use the elliptical. I know it's not a perfect substitute, but I did find that when I was at one point in time, I was struggling to get some running in. I can't remember what the issue was that I had going on, but I switched over to the elliptical, and I have structured elliptical workouts. So I'm just not getting on there and just kind of like, going with the motion, nothing like that. My workouts are purposeful and structured. And I found that when I did get back to running, that the strength in my glutes that I had gained from doing the elliptical, the way that I was doing it, was actually allowing me to run hills more efficiently and more powerful. And so running up a hill didn't take as much out of me. So I was like, I know that this works. that's another option that I have available is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, maybe run for, do like a run walk, you know,
And then
for
elliptical, yeah.
whatever, and then just jump on and kind of do a balance of an elliptical session to kind of like round it out a little
Yeah, as
bit to
long as it
remove the
doesn't
impact. So,
cause like as long as you're on there and you're not feeling it, you're like, okay, this is feeling good, and it's not you're not like, oh, I kind of feel my Achilles. I think if there's anything that's kind of even remotely kind of causing that heel pain or that Achilles pain to kind of have to back off that for a little bit. But if you can do that, because I do think the elliptical can be a great cross training tool, and like
mhm.
you said, it's surprising how it can work well. I think you do need to do some running at some point. You can't just do elliptical, but
Yeah,
I mean, I've heard like I don't know how much of this is exactly true, but like the Parker Valby, like she's like the phenomenal athlete that came from the University of Florida, or I can't remember what university, but she was, she's prone to injury, and she did a lot of her training, a lot of cross training on the elliptical in addition to her runs, and she's done phenomenal. She's like made it to the Olympics, and she's fresh out of college, right? So I think she did the 10,000 meters. So it's kind of amazing, so I wouldn't, I think people like to kind of, that's not the same as running, and,
right. Yeah.
but I think there's a lot to be said for sometimes doing some of those cross training methods that maybe can kind of translate. I don't think, unfortunately, like cycling translates as much, but I definitely think something like the elliptical, or even, yeah, I mean, it really depends on what aggravates your Achilles, but even like I wonder, like if it's going uphill, like if you're going up a treadmill incline, does that make it worse? Like going,
Usually it does.
okay,
And I think a lot of it is because it's the flex. It's not necessarily the impact
right.
on the treadmill, but it's the dorsiflexion
Yeah.
of the foot itself. You know, so when the foot, you know, is forced at up at an angle, it's going to transfer that pressure into the back.
Mm-hmm.
Because earlier I tried to do a little bit of elliptical work maybe like a month ago, and I could feel it in my Achilles. I could feel it starting to heat up a little bit, and it really irritated me. So I was
It
like, man, I
does.
can't even do the elliptical
You do
without
this,
like
yeah.
flaring this stuff up. And so that's what I figured out is it was the
Mhm.
flexion of the foot, not necessarily the impact of the
Right,
ground.
that makes sense. So,
So
because it was
that's
like an
something that I need
impact
to test
related
out.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, you could do like incline, but yeah, if it's that, because that will take the impact off. So you might be able to run without impact as much going on an incline surface, like on a treadmill,
Mhm.
or doing like, did a lot of like weighted vest incline treadmill walking when I was in like January, when I was kind of ramping up into my marathon training, just to kind of get some zone, really like easy zone 1, zone 2, and kind of just kind of get some volume without doing a lot of running as I was trying to ramp into it, and it's just a little bit easier than running on the treadmill. But I don't know, like you'd have to maybe test some things out to see what
The issue
can you
is
do
that
that doesn't
the main thing is we got to try and figure out
you have it.
why
Yeah.
it's so persistent, you know, why this is causing it. And I know that I tend to have really tight calves,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, over time, if you don't get those calves to loosen up, it's going to create tension on the Achilles. And that's what can cause plantar fasciitis to flare up as well. So the question becomes is like, okay, well, why are my calves being so overworked and super tight all the time? So it's this diagnosis that we have to kind of go through. And most of the time it's further up the chain, you know, further up the posterior chain. So I'm starting to wonder. I know that I've done a lot of work on my glute strength, you know, and my hip strength. I know that I've seen significant progress there, and I'm significantly stronger based on what I'm able to do in the weight room. But I'm kind of wondering if that is transitioning into the run. You know, even though I may be stronger, doesn't necessarily mean that my muscles are engaging like they should be, you know, during the running motion
Mm-hmm.
versus a static, you know, weight session where,
Hmm.
you know, there's no where you're fixed
True.
kind of. So I'm not quite sure kind of like
I
what's
wonder if
going
you
on if
did like
there's if that's more
walking,
focus.
yeah, like walking calf raises, or like maybe more, yeah, like more drills, more plyometric stuff that's running related. I don't know. Yeah, sometimes it is just trying to figure out like what is the root of the issue, because if you keep doing something that's aggravating it, even if you take the time off, it unfortunately will come back,
It
right?
comes
So,
back. Yeah. So
I mean,
got to find
maybe
the
just
root
having
cause.
to focus a lot on digging in with that foam roller or the Theragun into the calves. Like that's something I was doing a lot in my marathon training and just spending like 10 minutes every night, like just like because my calves would get tight and sore and just like getting in there with that Theragun and spending like 5 minutes on each leg, but mostly on my calves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know because I don't have a huge history with like Achilles issues, but I think it helped loosen the calves up quite a bit. So I don't know, but why is that happening? Is there something about your running form maybe that's causing that?
Yeah.
You'd almost have to go to like someone to kind of analyze that, but maybe that's worth a little bit
I
more
think,
of
yeah, I think one of the
exploration.
things that I can do is if I do find that when I need to start training, for this Ironman, this half Iron, if it materializes, what I can do is one of the things that I do with athletes who can't run high volume or run as much as we kind of want to run is we focus on the bike and we hammer it on the bike and we ride a lot. So if I can become an even stronger cyclist, it does transition into the run because it does set me up better to run as well as I can with good form because I'm not so fatigued coming off of the bike. I'm fresher. I should be able, to hold form a little bit more. So it does set me up a little bit better. Plus, you're still working on the cardiovascular engine, so it's not like oh, this is your cardiovascular is not like part of a pie where it's like, oh, this is only the bike portion and this is only the run portion. It's all one system. So if
That's
we
true.
do stuff that improves the system,
Improve
it
your
may not be
running.
directly, it's not the same thing as like building run fitness, but it is the same thing as kind of like building cardiovascular fitness and deepening that well. So that's kind of one of the things that I think is a light at the end of the tunnel is that if the Achilles and the plantar fascia issues don't really go away, then I know that I can ride as much as I want and it doesn't affect those issues. I ride a lot now and it doesn't hurt. In fact, my legs feel fantastic, coming off of a bike and, even during the bike. So if I can just ride a lot, then I think that sets me up good for race day. It may not be what I really want. I want to be able to run, 5 days a week, but my body may not hold up for 5 days a week. So
Yeah, that's a good
there are
point.
things
I
that we can
think
do.
you want to do some running, but you just might not be able to do the amount you want to
Yeah.
do. But I think you can build some good fitness doing the biking and maybe some cross training, and then doing if you can do some running just so you're able to, your body's used to the running, like, because you can't do no
Yeah,
running
it
and
may
then do
that
that
you
for
have to
like,
do like, maybe 3 or 4 days worth of running
yeah,
rather than the 5 or, do 3 days for one block and then, for 2 weeks up it to 4 days and then roll back to three. There's all kinds of different techniques that we can use to alter volume, but I
right,
got to find that frequency that allows me to run without causing too much more damage. I know if
right,
it's
yeah,
so it's a fine
yeah.
line. You
Finally,
usually don't know you've crossed the line till you've crossed it.
yeah.
It's just like
Well, it's
now
like,
you just
oh,
like I guess that was too much.
yeah, it's like the pain is so
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's something I've done something here that's not good. So it's hard. Yeah, I think that's something a lot of athletes struggle with. I mean, I think most people who've been in the game at least for a little while have had an injury. I mean, I'm sure there are those people out there who've never really been injured, but I think most people have experienced an injury. I know Achilles issues are pretty common, and I think pretty common also for sometimes athletes as we get a little bit older. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that can relate to what you're going through. It's just something we all struggle with. And it's like, how do you know when to take time off and how do you know when to go back to it? And or, are there certain instances where you can kind of push through? And that is hard to know because I've had that all of those scenarios where I pushed through and I've been okay and where I pushed through and I made it worse, so it's tough, but I think it's a good discussion and I feel like we've
Yeah.
and I'm really curious. You'll have to update us when we talk, maybe even next week, because we're going to do, or not next week, but I guess I don't know
I
when
guess it
this one
depends on
will
the
come out.
frequency
Yeah.
like when this episode is
This
actually
might
going to
actually
be
come out after.
released.
So,
So,
yeah. So maybe we'll
yeah.
have already discussed it because maybe anyway, either way, well, I'm sure you'll update people at some point about what you
Yeah.
decide to do and what happens there. And maybe, you can continue to update us on your progress with that, I'm sure, because we'll continue to do these coaches corners as we go through, and hopefully as long as people find them interesting. So like we said in our last coaches corner, we did mention our Facebook group. So it's the Endurance Athlete Journey Podcast Facebook group. So we have a Facebook account that's for the podcast, but if you want to be part of the community, we have the group, and that is where you can ask questions for us. So specific questions, even things you want us to cover, or questions you want us to maybe even cover on the coaches corner, because we could even make it into a question and answer session sometimes. So hit us up there, and anything, if you're struggling with something or just anything, just, that's a great place to go, and even tell us any feedback for the podcast. And then speaking of feedback, we would really appreciate it if you could go on to wherever you listen to your podcast and write a review. So whether that's like Spotify, Apple, I don't know if Audible allows reviews, but anywhere you listen, if you could just write a quick review, obviously if it's a positive, it's appreciated, but any review is good because we do want to continue to evolve and get better over time. But that really just helps us out. We don't have any money that we get from the podcast, no sponsors. And so the only way, one of the ways we can really grow the podcast is to have those reviews. They really help. So that would be very much appreciated. It should take like 5 minutes of your time. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think this was a great conversation, and yeah, just keeping in mind that this is effectively like a small business, and we don't make anything off of this podcast, and so we do it just because we have a love for what we do, and we want to see others achieve goals like we have, or not even like we have. If you have something that you want to achieve, we'd love to be able to support you in any way that we can, and if it's through this podcast and through content, that makes it absolutely worth every hour that we've spent recording, every dollar that we've spent on storage fees and recording platforms and
Mics.
Equipment, mics,
Which you
brand
maybe
new mics,
noticed.
by the way. So yay!
So the audio portion may be a little better now, which is
Yeah, so
we're
I think the
progressing.
reviews will help others find us. It also gives us a little bit of feedback on how we're doing, and if you find the information valuable, they are greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you. And so I guess we'll say our goodbyes, but thanks again for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and we'll see you next time.
All right, we'll see you later.
Yeah. Bye, Justin.
Bye.
Listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Feel free to leave us up to a 5-star review on iTunes and Spotify, because leaving a review really helps others like you find us. Visit the podcast website for other episodes of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast at enduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Send Coach Justin and Kate an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabularasaracing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.